Today, we're going to talk about a system that you can use in your classroom to reduce chatter and blurting. And I don't have to tell you how big these little things can be. It doesn't seem like a big deal, right? I mean, these days we have so many bigger issues to deal with in our classroom, but the reality is that chatter and blurting can still just massively disrupt our classrooms. And if we don't have a plan for these simple problems, it can quickly get way out of control. And it can get to the point where we can hardly teach or do anything that we really need to do in our classroom. So it's very important that we do have a plan for how we're going to deal with chatter, how we're going to deal with blurting. Because if we don't have a plan, then sometimes we just freeze up. We don't deal with it. And as we talked about in the previous video, if you don't deal with issues while they're small, they grow and they get worse. And so we definitely want to make sure we have a plan to deal with chatter and to deal with blurting. So the system that I used when I first started teaching, I did not have a plan and it was bad. And it got to the point where the principal had to call me in and say, you got to figure this out. I went to my mentor teacher. I was really upset. I didn't know what to do. And she recommended using a warning system. And since then, this really helped me turn things around. We've adapted it and taught it to a lot of you, and it's helped a lot of you turn things around. So I'm going to explain the system. Here's how it works. With a warning system, when a student is disruptive, so they're blurting, they're talking, whatever it is, they get a warning. The warning has absolutely no consequences with it. And that's important because you need to be prepared to give out warnings whenever students are talking. Even if 10 students are talking at the same time or students are talking a lot, you need to be ready to give out those warnings as many as needed. And you can do that because there's no consequences attached to it immediately. However, if a student gets, say, 3 warnings in a class period, or whatever you set up, it can be more, it can be less. If they get to that point, then there is an actual consequence. So this works really well because students can see, okay, I'm being disruptive, and they can self-correct before they get a consequence. And that's actually the goal. The goal is that you don't have to give out a ton of consequences. And if you use this system, at first you might have to, just so students see, oh, they're actually serious about this. But once they're used to this system, I taught over 100 middle school students, and I only had to actually give the consequence maybe 5 to 10 times a year. So it was very rare. I gave warnings out a ton, but students normally were able to self-correct before we got to the point where they needed a consequence. Now, a few details of how this actually works. First of all, how do you give the warning? Well, the old school method is to write names on the board, but most teachers don't do that these days. So if what you could do, one would be to give class dojo points if that's somewhere where students can easily see that. Another method teachers use would be to take yellow cards, little yellow cards, cut them out, laminate them, and hand them to students on their desk, kind of like a referee would in soccer, right? Another thing that you could do, younger elementary teachers, I've seen them make 3 bubbles, laminate them, put them on their students' desk, and then use a dry erase marker to pop the bubble with an X when students get a warning. So these are just a few different ideas. You can give a warning any way that you want, as long as you don't have to stop your flow of teaching in order to give the warning. So you give the student a warning. As I said, you need to tell them ahead of time, you're not in trouble. You might even actually use those words when you're first teaching it to them. You're not in trouble. So they realize there's no consequence attached to this. They're not in trouble yet, but they have been disruptive and they do need to self-correct. All right. So you give the warnings and then nothing happens unless they get multiple ones. And then, as I said, you do need to be prepared to have a consequence if they get to that point. Now, a question I get with this a lot is, well, how many warnings should they be able to get in a class period and how often should they reset? That is totally up to you. And my recommendation is pick a number and a reset period that you feel comfortable with. If you can always adjust it later, make it more, make it less, but it's important that you feel like it's fair and you feel aligned with that number so that you'll be confident using the system. In my class, it was 3 warnings in a class period, which was only 40 minutes long. That worked really well for me. As I said, not many students got to that point. So I would pick a number where you think students really have to be ignoring my warnings to get to the consequence. So pick a number where that makes sense. In elementary, you might choose to reset it at lunch or to reset it each class period, or you could have it go the whole day. It's really up to what you think is going to work best. So that's the system that I used. It really worked really well. And I know that the system can work in elementary, in middle school. We've had teachers use it in high school as well. I think the key is to just explain it to them and to obviously choose a way to give the warning that is age appropriate. I think it's so important that you have a plan. This is just one option. There are many other ways that you can deal with chatter and blurting, but this is the one that worked for me and that's worked for a lot of the teachers that we work with. We teach more options, though, and more ideas in our full course in Classroom Management 101. And we teach also how to have a plan for every area of your classroom. And that is so important. We talked today here about chatter and blurting, but you need to know what to do when students are wandering around the room, when someone's rude, when students aren't doing their work, right? All of the common classroom issues that occur in your classroom, you need to have a plan for how to deal with them. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to be consistent in your discipline with them. So if you need help with that, we would love to help you in Classroom Management 101, where you get videos that walk you through each step. We help you make your plan. We even have a copy and we have like templates all ready to go with copy and paste idea banks. You can simply go through the ideas, pick the ones that work best for you, copy and paste them in, and have your plan ready to go. There's also mentors available to answer your questions and to help you if you ever get stuck. So we encourage you. We'd love to see you inside Classroom Management 101, and we hope that this warning system works really well for you.